Mason Riker stood straight, arms crossed behind his back, his sharp eyes scanning every corner of the hall. His black uniform hugged his strong frame, and a small silver badge gleamed on his chest. He was a bodyguard, one of Earth's best. He had served in many high-risk zones, guarded many powerful people, but this mission felt different. This time he wasn't protecting a human. Across the hall stood Envoy Tasari Velen, tall and graceful, her smooth silver skin catching the soft lights above. She was a diplomat from the Alaran Empire, a race known for their intelligence, peacekeeping skills, and complete lack of emotion. Her long robe shimmered with tiny patterns that shifted gently as she moved. Her large violet eyes didn't blink often, and her voice was always calm. To Mason, she looked like living art. To her, he was just the human. They were on Orpheus Prime, a neutral space station floating between Earth and Alaran territory. It was a place of trade, politics, and sometimes silent threats. Tasari had come here to lead peace talks between 3 galactic nations. Mason's job was simple: keep her alive, but she didn't seem to care about protection. "You are standing too close," she said without looking at him. Alaran personal space guidelines require 2 meters. Mason took a slow step back. "Noted, ma'am. But Earth's protection guidelines say I should be within reach if a threat appears." Tasari turned her head slightly. "That is unlikely. This station is secure." Mason didn't argue. He knew better than to fight logic with emotion, but he also knew something she didn't. Danger doesn't send a calendar invite. It just shows up. The day passed quietly. Diplomats from other species arrived, and the hall began to fill with chatter in different languages. Cameras rolled. Reporters floated around on small hover discs. The peace talks were being broadcast live across dozens of systems. Tasari stood at the center of it all, her hands behind her back, speaking softly to other leaders. Her voice carried calm, her words careful and clean. She didn't smile. Alarans didn't smile. Mason kept watching. Then something flickered. His ears caught a faint buzz from the far left corner. He spotted a small drone, too small for media, and too silent for official use. His instincts kicked in. "Get down," he shouted. Tasari turned, confused. "What are you—" Mason leaped. The explosion wasn't big, but it was sharp and bright. A plasma grenade, the size of an orange, had been thrown from the shadows. Mason caught most of the blast on his armored shoulder as he threw himself between the grenade and Tasari. The force knocked them both back. For a few seconds, everything was silent. Smoke curled in the air. Mason rolled over, coughing. His shoulder plate was cracked and smoking. Blood trickled from a small cut on his cheek. He sat up fast, looking for Tasari. She was lying on the ground, stunned but unharmed. A small burn mark singed the edge of her robe. Her violet eyes stared wide at him. "You are injured," she said slowly. "Just a scratch," Mason replied, trying to smile through the pain. "You okay?" She sat up carefully. "Yes. Your action was unexpected. You could have been seriously hurt." "That's the job," he said. "You're my responsibility." Security rushed in. The crowd was moved out. No one claimed responsibility for the attack, but it was clear someone didn't want peace. Later, in the quiet of the medical bay, Tasari stood near Mason's bed. He was shirtless now, his left shoulder wrapped in white bandages. A nurse had cleaned the wound, and a small, healing device beeped softly beside him. Tasari watched in silence. Mason felt her gaze but didn't turn. "You could have let the blast hit me," she said finally. "Your body has less value to your government than mine does to the Alaran." Mason laughed, then winced. "Wow, you really know how to thank someone." She tilted her head. "I am not programmed for gratitude, I follow protocol." "Well, I don't follow protocol, I follow gut. And my gut told me to protect you." She stepped closer. "Why would you risk injury?" "For me." Mason met her eyes now. "Because you're not just an alien or a diplomat. You're a person, and people protect people." Tasari was silent. Her culture didn't believe in personal sacrifice. To an Alaran, logic ruled above all. One life could not outweigh a larger mission. But Mason had chosen to bleed for her without hesitation. She didn't understand it. Not yet. But she felt something stir inside her. A question she didn't know how to answer. That night, in her private quarters, Tasari replayed the moment, in her mind. The way Mason had moved. The heat of the explosion. The look in his eyes, full of duty, but also heart. For the first time in years, she added a line in her personal log, something not required by her role. Today, a human bled to save me. I don't know why. I must understand. And somewhere deep inside her, something shifted. The medical lights hummed softly above Mason Riker's head. He sat quietly on the edge of the hospital bed, stretching his left shoulder. The pain had faded, but the memory of the blast still lingered. His uniform lay folded on the chair beside him, torn at the shoulder where the plasma had hit. He looked at his arm, just a scar now. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Mason turned his head and froze. Tasari Velen entered, her long robe flowing behind her, her hands folded neatly in front of her. She looked as calm as always. But something about her felt different. "Good evening, Officer Riker," she said. "Evening," Mason replied, surprised. "Didn't expect a visit from you. I was advised that checking on your recovery would be polite." Mason chuckled. "Polite? Is that your way of saying thank you?" Tasari tilted her head slightly. "I am not sure, but I believe it is expected." She walked closer to him, eyes scanning the machines around his bed. "You are healing well." "Thanks to modern tech," Mason said, tapping the healing pad on his shoulder. "Won't even leave much of a scar." Tasari paused. "I reviewed the footage. You moved faster than predicted. You shielded me without hesitation." "That's what bodyguards do," he said. "But you were injured. Your reaction was emotional, not logical. That is unusual." Mason leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Maybe. Or maybe it's just called being human." Tasari didn't answer right away. She stood in silence, her eyes fixed on the floor. Then she spoke softly. "In Alaran culture, personal sacrifice is rare. Emotions are controlled. Actions must follow protocol." Mason raised an eyebrow. "So saving someone without thinking it through is wrong?" "It is not considered efficient," she replied. "You risked your life, but if you had failed, both of us could have been lost." Mason shook his head with a small smile. "I don't care about efficiency, I care about doing what's right." Tasari's expression didn't change, but something in her voice did. "That is difficult for me to understand." Mason stood up slowly. "You don't have to understand it. Just know that I'd do it again." Later that evening, back in her private chambers, Tasari sat at her desk, surrounded by glowing symbols. Her mind should have been focused on tomorrow's peace talks. Instead, she was reading about human emotion, loyalty, sacrifice, friendship. Words like trust and honor appeared over and over. She touched her own chest lightly, wondering why she felt uneasy. Or was it curiosity? No, it couldn't be. Alarans did not feel that way. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Priority message, Council Directive. 7. Increased security measures required. Suspected internal interference. Her eyes narrowed. Internal interference? That meant someone from her own people might be working against the peace talks. She quickly opened a secure channel. "Mason Riker, please report to my chambers." 10 minutes later, Mason arrived, still in his partial uniform, a small wrap around his healing shoulder. He looked tired, but alert. "You called for me?" "Yes," Tasari said. "I have received a warning. The Council suspects sabotage from within the Alaran ranks." Mason frowned. "You think your own people are trying to stop the peace talks?" "I do not know," she said. "But the message was sent directly. That is rare." Mason folded his arms. "If that's true, you're in danger again, more than before." "I have increased security protocols," she replied. "But I need someone who thinks differently, who reacts quickly. Someone like you." Mason raised an eyebrow. "You trust me now?" "I am beginning to," she said softly. That surprised him more than any plasma grenade could. Over the next 2 days, Tessari and Mason worked together in secret. They reviewed guest lists, scanned communication logs, and looked at every detail of the recent attack. They discovered that the drone, used in the explosion, had a unique energy signature, Ilaran-made. It was clear now, the enemy wasn't outside. It was inside. Late one night, Mason and Tessari stood on the observation deck, stars shining around them through the glass dome. The room was quiet. Both were tired, their minds heavy with questions. "I always thought your people were perfect," Mason said, breaking the silence. "Smart, peaceful, controlled." "We are taught to hide flaws," Tessari said. "But no species is perfect, not even mine." She looked at him. "You are injured. You could have left this mission." "I don't walk away from people who need help," Mason replied. She looked out at the stars again. "I wonder, if I had been the one in your place, would I have done the same?" Mason didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because for the first time, Tessari Velen, the cold Ilaran envoy, was asking questions not from duty, but from feeling. The next day, another attempt was made. But this time, it failed before it even began. A small device planted near the Diplomat hall was discovered by Mason just in time. He disarmed it, and Tessari rewired the security code so only humans and Ilarans working together could access key areas. When asked by her fellow Ilarans why she allowed a human to interfere with internal systems, Tessari gave a simple answer. "Because he saved me, and I trust him." Gasps followed her words. Ilarans didn't speak like that, but she didn't care. Later that evening, alone in her quarters, she updated her personal log again. "I acted against protocol today, not out of fear, not out of logic, but because I wanted to. Is this what it means to be human?" And for the first time, she felt something warm inside. She didn't have a name for it yet, but she knew it started the moment a human bled for her, and she had started to care. The lights in the lower level of Orpheus Prime flickered faintly. This part of the station was old, not meant for public visits. Pipes hissed along the walls, and wires hung loose from panels. Most diplomats never came down here. But Mason Riker and Tessari Velen were not most diplomats. They walked side by side through the maintenance halls, both alert. Tessari wore a dark cloak over her robes. Mason had replaced his damaged armor with a lighter, more flexible suit, one he could move quickly in. "This area is not in our schedule," Tessari said quietly. "I know," Mason replied. "But the power signature from that bomb yesterday? It came from this level." She raised an eyebrow. "You believe the saboteur is hiding here?" "Maybe not the person," Mason said, scanning the wall with a portable reader. "But something is down here. Records, devices, maybe messages." They reached a locked door. The scanner showed it belonged to a restricted Ilaran storage unit. Tessari stepped forward and placed her hand on the panel. It blinked green, and the door slid open. Inside, the room was filled with old tech, Ilaran, data orbs, long unused consoles, and dusty screens. A few flickered to life as they entered. Mason walked to a control pad and touched the surface. Nothing happened. Tessari stepped beside him. "Your technology is not compatible." "Didn't think so," he replied. "Can you access it?" She nodded and moved her fingers across the console in a smooth motion. Blue lights lit up across the room. A list of names appeared: cargo, codes, and movement logs. Mason scanned the list quickly. "That one," he said, pointing. "Same ID from the drone we found." Tsari's eyes narrowed. "That is a Diplomat-level access code. Only a high-ranking Ilaran could use it." "So someone important is behind this," Mason said. "Someone close to you." She didn't speak, but he could see the tension in her hands. "We'll find out who," he added gently. She looked at him, her voice quiet. "This will not be easy." He smiled. "Nothing worth doing ever is." Back in her private chamber, Tessari stared at the access logs. The code was clear. The drone and the bomb were both activated by strategist Velsan, a respected member of the Ilaran Council. He was also her cousin. She closed her eyes. Velsan had always been proud, firm in his belief that the Alaran should not form close bonds with humans. He feared emotion, connection, weakness, and now it seemed he feared peace. She sent the data to Mason, encrypting it in human format. A few hours later, Mason met her in a quiet room near the station's observatory. Outside the wide glass wall, stars glowed like tiny diamonds. Tessari stood with her hands behind her back, her eyes locked on the stars. "He's your cousin?" Mason asked. "Yes," she said without turning. "He helped raise me after my parents were sent to another system." Mason stepped closer. "And now he's trying to stop the peace talks. Why?" "He believes alliance with humans will weaken us. He thinks we will lose our identity." Mason stayed quiet for a moment, then asked, "What do you think?" Tessari looked at him now. I am learning that identity is not something to protect by building walls. It can grow. It can change." He smiled softly. "That's very human of you." She blinked once. "That is not an insult?" He laughed. "No, it's a compliment." The next day they met in secret again, this time in one of the human-controlled labs. Mason brought something with him, an old exosuit, human-made, designed for dangerous missions. It was scratched and outdated, but still usable. Sari looked at it with confusion. "This is a battle suit." "You'll need it," Mason said. "Velsan knows we're close to exposing him. If he acts again, he won't hold back." Tessari hesitated. "This is human technology. It is not designed for my form." "I've made some adjustments," Mason replied. "I thought ahead." "You built this for me?" "Yeah," he said with a small shrug. "Just in case." She stepped closer, running her fingers across the metal chest plate. It was heavy, strange, not elegant like Ilaran design, but it had been prepared with care. "I do not usually wear armor," she said. Mason nodded. "And I don't usually talk to aliens who quote human poetry in their logs." She raised her head sharply. "You read my personal log?" "You left it open on your datapad," he said, holding up his hands. "Just one line. Something about wondering what it means to be human." Sari was quiet. "I don't have all the answers," Mason added. "But I know one thing. You don't have to be human to care. You just have to feel something." She looked at the exosuit again. "Very well. I will wear it. For protection." But, deep inside, she knew it was more than that. That night, a silent signal was sent to the council. Velsan had discovered their investigation. His message was cold. "Envoy Tessari Velen is no longer neutral. She has shared Ilaran data with a human. She has broken protocol." She read the message without expression. Then she looked at Mason. "If I do not return to Ilaran space within 24 hours, they will remove me from my position. Or worse." "You don't have to go back," Mason said. "I must," she replied. "But I will not go until I deliver the proof." Mason nodded. "Then we do it together." She looked at him for a long moment. "You bleed for others," she said. "I was taught to never do that. But now, I want to protect something too." And just like that, the divide between protocol and purpose began to fall. The grand chamber of the council hall on Orpheus Prime stood silent as the stars. The room was high and round with a large glass ceiling that showed the stars beyond. This was the place where peace was to be declared between worlds. It was also the place where betrayal had hidden itself. Tessari Velen stepped into the hall, dressed not in her usual robe, but in the modified exosuit Mason had given her. The armor was sleek and dark, made to fit her tall Ilaran frame. It was not a weapon, but it was a message. She would not run. She would not stay silent. Beside her stood Mason Riker, tall and firm as always. His shoulder was still sore, but he didn't show it. His eyes scanned the chamber, watching for signs of danger. Above them, members of the Ilaran Council appeared on large projection screens. They had been summoned for an emergency session. A few human leaders were watching too, quietly connected, through a secure channel. Tessari stepped forward. "Counselors," she said, her voice clear and strong. "You have received a report from strategist Velsan, claiming that I have broken protocol." One of the counselors spoke, his voice calm. You shared sensitive Alaran information with a human guard. This is true? Yes, Tessari answered. Because that human saved my life twice. And because he helped me discover the truth. One of our own planned to sabotage the peace talks. Gasps echoed across the chamber. Mason remained silent, standing behind her. Another voice came. Do you have proof of this claim? Tsari lifted her hand and activated a small hollow device. The air shimmered, showing security logs, device signatures, and a list of transport codes. Mason had helped organize them so any species could understand. The evidence was clear. It pointed to strategist Velsan. He used a Diplomat code to activate a plasma drone, Tessari said. He placed a timed explosive near the negotiation hall. Both times, Officer Riker intervened. The room fell into stunned silence. A few seconds later, the screen flickered, and Velsan himself appeared. He looked calm, but tight-lipped. His violet eyes were cold. You have chosen emotion over logic, Tessari, he said. You act like a human now. You wear their armor. You speak their words. Tessari stood tall. I act like someone who believes peace is worth protecting. You do not. Velsan's eyes narrowed. You are no longer fit to lead this mission. The counselors murmured among themselves. But then something unexpected happened. One of the human ambassadors, an older woman with silver hair, spoke through the channel. I may be an outsider, she said, but I've watched these two work together for days. If the Alaran do not see Tessari's value, the Earth Alliance will. Mason looked at Tessari, proud. Then the Alaran head counselor raised a hand. This is most unusual, he said, but the evidence is clear. Velsan will be removed from duty while a full investigation is completed. Velsan's screen went dark. Tessari let out a slow breath. It was done. After the session ended, Tessari and Mason walked down a quiet corridor. The station felt calmer now. Peace was not fully achieved yet, but the threat was gone, for now. You did well, Mason said. I had help, Tessari replied. She stopped near a window. Beyond it, stars blinked in the black sea of space. I will be asked to return home soon, she said. Some will still not trust me. Mason looked at her carefully. And do you want to go? She paused. I am not sure. He nodded. Well, if you stay, we could use you, not just as a diplomat, as a bridge between worlds. She turned to him. I was trained never to become the bridge. I was told to remain above feeling. But you didn't, he said softly. You chose to. Tsari looked down at her hand covered in the soft metal of the exosuit. Do you think that makes me weaker? He shook his head. No, I think that makes you stronger than anyone on your council. They stood in silence for a moment. The air between them was different now. Warmer, not romantic, not yet. But something real. Something growing. That night, Tessari sat in her private quarters, looking at her reflection. Her violet eyes held something new. Light. She opened her personal log once again. Today, I stood against my own. Not because I hated them, but because I believed they were wrong. A human helped me see the truth. He bled for me. I bled inside, for him. We are different in form, but perhaps not in heart. If this is what it means to feel, then I no longer wish to be empty. She saved the log and closed her eyes. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel cold. The next morning, Mason stood at the docking bay waiting. He had expected Tessari to leave. Her people had called for her. Her ship was ready. But when the doors opened, it wasn't a farewell party. It was Tessari, wearing a new suit, half Ellerin design, half human tech. She had redesigned her role and her place. You're staying? Mason asked, surprised. I requested to become the permanent representative of the Alaran to Earth, she said. They approved it, reluctantly. Mason smiled. They'll come around. She stepped beside him. You once told me that people protect people. He nodded. Still true? She looked at him. Then allow me to protect you this time. Not with weapons or shields, but with what I've learned. Mason didn't speak right away. He just nodded, quietly proud. As they walked side by side into the rising light of the station, Neither of them said the word that was building between them. Not yet. But both knew. They had crossed galaxies, broken rules, and opened each other's hearts. And now they were no longer Bodyguard and Diplomat, they were something more. Peace on Orpheus Prime did not come with a trumpet or fanfare. It came quietly, like the slow thaw of ice under sunlight. After the council meeting, the alliance talks between Earth and the Alaran resumed. With Velsan removed and the sabotage revealed, trust slowly began to rebuild. But it was still fragile. It needed careful hands, and no one understood that better than Tisari Velen and Mason Riker. Tisari had chosen to stay on the station, now serving as the permanent Alaran envoy to Earth. Her decision caused whispers among her own people. Some said she had changed. Some said she had become too human. But none could deny one thing: she was effective. Her voice in the meetings was calm, honest, and steady. Her knowledge of both sides helped ease old fears. She no longer avoided emotion, she used it as a strength. She had learned that caring was not weakness. It was connection. And Mason, he continued to guard her. Not because it was still his assignment, but because he wanted to. Something had formed between them, a quiet, respectful bond, not spoken in words, but in small actions. In trust. In shared silence. One evening, the lights on the station dimmed to a golden glow. Sari and Mason stood on the viewing deck watching a nearby human supply ship dock. "I read today's treaty draft," Mason said. "It's getting close." Sari nodded. 3 points left. Trade routes, joint medical research, and military aid policies. He gave a small smile. "The hard ones." She tilted her head. "We will manage." They stood quietly for a moment, watching the supply ship finish docking. "Do you miss home?" Mason asked her softly. Sari was quiet before answering. "Sometimes, but I do not feel lost here. Not anymore." Mason looked at her. "You've changed." She turned to face him. "So have you." They both smiled. Then the station alarm sounded. Not a red alert, just a warning. A small vessel had entered the outer boundary. No ID code. No response to signals. Tisari and Mason turned at once. Inside the command center, officers moved quickly. "Unknown ship," the officer reported. "Size, small cruiser, not responding. Trajectory on toward the station." Mason leaned over the console. "Show me the path." The ship was heading straight toward the ambassador level, the area reserved for diplomats. "That's not random," Mason said. "It's targeting us." Tisari's expression sharpened. "We must move." As the ship approached, the station raised its shields, but the vessel was fast, too fast for something unarmed. Inside the ambassador wing, Mason and Tisari rushed to evacuate nearby rooms. As they cleared the last corridor, the outside wall shuddered. A sudden impact, a breach. Tisari was thrown forward, but Mason caught her. The metal wall groaned, then cracked. A corner of the hallway exploded in sparks. "We need to seal this section," Mason shouted. Tisari nodded. "The control panel." She ran toward it even as the pressure dropped and air hissed around them. Mason pulled her back. "No, too dangerous." "I can reach it," she shouted, her voice almost drowned by the sound. Then the wall gave way, just slightly, and a sharp beam of heat from the damaged cruiser struck through the opening. Mason saw it just in time. He pushed Tisari out of the way and took the full force of the beam across his back. He fell. "Tisari, run," he said weakly. But she didn't. She dropped beside him, her hand over the wound, her other hand glowing with Ellerin energy. Her people had trained her to control energy fields, but she had never used them for healing before. Not like this. Tears filled her eyes. "Stay with me," she whispered. "You cannot bleed again, not for me." Mason coughed. "I'd do it again." "I know," she said softly. She activated the panel beside them, sealing the breach and restoring air pressure. The immediate danger was over. But Mason was unconscious now. His breathing was shallow. Tisari called for help. And then, as lights returned and medics arrived, She stood silently over him. Her hands were red from his blood. Mason woke 3 days later in the medical wing. He blinked slowly, his back aching, his side wrapped tightly. The soft hum of monitors filled the room. Then he saw her, Tisari, sitting beside his bed, holding a data pad but not reading. She looked up at him. Her violet eyes softened. "You are awake," she said gently. "Barely," he croaked. She leaned forward. "You pushed me out of the way," he gave a tired grin. "Old habit." She didn't smile. Her voice dropped. "I told the council everything. The attack was not political. It was a rogue group. Human smugglers, angry at the new alliance. Rules. They wanted to send a message." Mason nodded slowly. "Did they?" "No," she said. "They failed." "But you didn't." Silence fell again. Then she placed something on the small table beside him, his badge, scratched, broken, burned at one edge. He looked at it, then at her. "I requested to keep it," she said, "as a reminder of what we built. Together." He looked at her for a long moment, and then slowly he reached out his hand. She took it. A week later, the final peace treaty was signed. Both humans and Alaran stood side by side. Tisari gave the opening speech. Mason stood behind her, no longer just a guard, but a partner in purpose. As the hall applauded, Tisari glanced at him. No words were needed. Their journey had started, with distance, duty, and protocol. It had ended with trust, sacrifice, and something deeper growing beneath the surface. Not all stories need romance to be powerful. Some just need two people, different in body but alike in spirit, willing to bleed, to speak, and to stand. Together. The end.